Blackswan is the first anti-fragile cryptocurrency, and today I'm going to be going over our Oxbull launch and some of the details there, as well as our future plans for Blackswan. I did just release an article yesterday basically covering these exact same two topics. However, I thought that a video could be a little bit more easy to understand, and also I could go more detail into our future plans for the project, because I felt like I didn't really cover too much in the article aside from listing a roadmap of when we are going to try to accomplish different things. However, if you haven't watched our initial video or researched Blackswan, whether it be reading the white paper, reading some of our Medium articles, I highly recommend you do that first in order to better understand what I'm talking about in this video. But I'm super excited to get into it, so let's get started. First, I wanted to quickly go over tokenomics. I know this has been covered a lot, but still a lot of people are asking me about this. It's a really important detail. So the main thing that we wanted to ensure with our tokenomics is a fair launch. So that means minimizing the development and team allocation, maximizing the community allocation, and also ensuring a long-term success of the token with what we distribute for a large long-term growth potential. So for development and team, there is a 2-year vesting period, and you can see TGE stands for token generation event. So we are only going to have 10% of our development allocation at launch, meaning it's going to be 200,000 SWAN tokens, and 2% of our team allocation, meaning it will be 20,000 SWAN tokens. So in total, the team will have 220,000 SWAN tokens at launch, whereas the community will have a much larger portion with the tokens from the pre-sale at Oxbull. And although it does say pre-sale here, I do want to clarify this is the only sale that we are doing. The Oxbull Launchpad sale is the only sale where we are distributing tokens. There was no pre-sale to early investors. There's no external party that's getting a better price or a worse price. The pre-sale at Oxbull is the only one that's happening. And then with the money that we get from those tokens sold at Oxbull, which by the way is going to be 100% accessible at launch, so there's no vesting period for the people who purchase tokens from the Oxbull launch, we'll take 100,000 USDC that we raise from our Launchpad sale and lock it in a liquidity position on QuickSwap with 1 million SWAN tokens in order to have that initial 10-cent listing price, and also make sure that our project can start off with a lot of initial liquidity to make sure that people are able to trade, buy, sell if they want to right when we launch. And of course, there's this very large portion here that you can see is the liquidity incentives. Now, the liquidity incentives, we do have a plan for these tokens. They will be slowly distributed over time. In fact, we might not need all of them, so that's a little hint as to what can occur in the future. But the main goal with the liquidity incentives are to make sure that there is enough liquidity on our platform to have a mature enough token so that the main Blackswan systems can launch. Because in order for our systems to be able to detect a drop in liquidity or an uncertain event, the token has to reach a certain level of maturity. And so until it reaches that level of maturity, we will be using these liquidity incentives in order to have some money for the Blackswan fund and to make sure that there's enough liquidity in the Blackswan lake before we can activate those main systems. And the Launchpad sale price is 8 cents with the listing price at 10 cents, as I mentioned before. And DEX listing protection, if you don't know what this is, basically there's a very large issue on DEXs right now where there are sniper bots that try to buy up the liquidity right when you list your project, and that causes a massive pump and dump right when you launch. A lot of the times, actually, it's not the founder's fault. However, for our project, we do have protection for that initial period to ensure that there's not a massive pump and dump right whenever we launch our token due to external parties trying to buy or sell our token. So just a quick recap of some of the goals. A fair launch is our first thing on our checklist. We want to make sure that everyone who wants tokens is able to receive them at a fair price whenever we initially launch, but also maintain substantial growth potential. We want to make sure that our project is not overpriced, at least initially, and I think with around 370,000 market cap, I think it has enough room to grow in the beginning. And we want to make sure we maintain that over time with our fundamental focus. So making sure we're always innovating, always building new products, always expanding our community with marketing. Those are focuses that we have a fundamental focus to continue that substantial growth potential. So no matter if you're a buyer on day one or a buyer 2 months from the time that we launch, you're still happy with holding the SWAN token. So this is something I didn't really go over in the Medium article that I released yesterday. But I thought this was a good time to talk about it because I haven't talked about it elsewhere, especially it wasn't mentioned in the Oxbull Medium post. So what I wanted to show here is that there's a differentiation between the SWAN token and the Blackswan fund when it comes to the Blackswan ecosystem. Basically, these are two puzzle pieces that have very different goals with what they're trying to do. So as we mentioned in the first video, the SWAN token is self-sustainable. So theoretically, if there was no Blackswan ecosystem, the SWAN tokens could still be sustainable on its own, still have its anti-fragile nature, its innovation on its own. That's what we're trying to explain here. There can still be products and different things that are built around the SWAN token itself. However, the interesting thing about the Blackswan fund is that the Blackswan fund is a puzzle piece, let's say, that allows us to connect a much larger ecosystem on top of the SWAN token to help it succeed even more long term. So let's say it's like lighting a fire, it's like putting gas to a fire or something. It will succeed on its own. However, the Blackswan fund can make it succeed even better and even faster than it could before. And how that can happen is by us creating other ecosystem products. So similar to other ecosystem coins, maybe you hold a token connected to a DEX where that token receives a certain percentage of DEX trading fees. Well, basically what can happen is any of those fees that we accrue from other products that we build within the Blackswan ecosystem can go into the Blackswan fund, which will then inversely benefit the SWAN token as well. So the Blackswan fund is like a puzzle piece that lets us infinitely scale Blackswan as large, as much as we want to do as much innovation as possible, with the SWAN token sort of being the main returning factor to the entire Blackswan ecosystem. And this plays perfectly into my next slide, which is another important aspect of the Blackswan ecosystem. And this is a question that we've received a lot as well, which is Blackswan an algo stablecoin? So I first wanted to quickly mention how I came up with the idea of Blackswan. Blackswan actually originated from Ampleforth. So Ampleforth is an algorithmic stablecoin on Ethereum, although I'm sure they've expanded farther than that since then. And Ampleforth maintains a $1 peg by expanding or contracting its supply. However, I felt that Ampleforth was not really delivering on its promises or on its goals just purely because of how the token operated. I thought that there was a better way to make a variable supply cryptocurrency that could maintain, let's say, a stable value. So that's how the idea for Blackswan came up. That's how we came up with the anti-fragile nature coming from Nassim Taleb and the Blackswan book and some of his other works as well. And so SWAN is not necessarily a stable coin on its own. It's not going to maintain a peg of $1 or of $100. What it could be seen as a soft peg to the amount of money in the Blackswan fund. However, it's still free to move as much as it wants. And while there are systems to protect the downside risk, so you could still consider it a form of a stable coin, it is not necessarily a traditional stable coin. So you could call it like an alt stable coin or something like that. But in the Blackswan ecosystem, there is still need for a traditional stablecoin. And that's why we're using USDC in the Blackswan fund and in the Blackswan Lake, because when you're staking in the Blackswan Lake, you're using USDC, and the Blackswan fund is going to accumulate USDC as well. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be creating our own traditional stablecoin for the Blackswan ecosystem in order to replace USDC in those two components, in the Blackswan fund and in the Blackswan Lake, in order to have an ecosystem that is all connected together and to create a stablecoin that can contribute to the anti-fragile nature of the Blackswan ecosystem and of the Blackswan token itself. So we haven't entirely ironed out or finalized the details for the stablecoin. However, a quick idea of where we're headed. A lot of people have been talking about Iron Finance, which is an algo stablecoin that recently collapsed due to a Blackswan event, you could say. Everyone started pulling out their money, and that caused the price of the Titan token to collapse until it basically made sense for people to continue to burn the stablecoin until the Titan token went to zero. So what we were thinking we could do with the Blackswan stablecoin is we could have a system similar to that. However, instead of minting the SWAN token whenever you burn a stablecoin, you could instead burn SWAN whenever you burn a stablecoin. So if the demand for stablecoins goes down, then the demand for Blackswan can go up from people trying to withdraw that stable store value. However, as I mentioned before, this is not finalized. This is just an idea, but you can see the vein that we're thinking to contribute to the ecosystem as a whole, where it could even contribute to positive price action with the SWAN token itself with the stablecoin that we built. So going back to what I was talking about earlier with our fundamental focus, Blackswan team expansion is extremely important to us, and this is something we've been doing sort of behind the scenes, at least up until now. So on our website, you can see the two founders, myself, Adrian, and Ali Burke, who is my partner. And since then, we have added 3 more members to the team: Spencer, which is another dev in the US, Chong and Alpcan, sorry if I mispronounced his name, and those are 2 community managers. You might have seen them in our Telegram, as well as another potential developer that we are currently in the process of hiring. However, really, after we do the Launchpad launch, we want to continue scaling our team extremely quickly. We have very ambitious goals that we want to try to accomplish, and we know that the return on our investment of development can be extremely high if executed correctly. So this is a large focus for us, and we want our team to at least double or triple in size just in, let's say, 1 month from the time that we launch. So finally, the Launchpad sale and QuickSwap listing is on July 9th. So if you're interested in our token, if you're interested in what we're doing, July 9th is the date to keep in mind. And if you would like to stay up to date with everything that's going on in Blackswan, make sure to join our Telegram, check out our white paper, our website, our Medium, our Twitter, everything. We have an amazing community. We have a lot of people working to ensure the success of this project, and we're super excited for everything that we're doing. Personally, this is a passion project of mine, and I hope to see success after launch on July 9th. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and see you in the next one.